Good morning and welcome to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. My name is Edna Friedberg and I'm one of the historians here in Washington, D.C. We are coming to you live from the museum's Hall of Remembrance as we mark 5 years ago this week the genocide perpetrated against Yazidi people by ISIS in northern Iraq. The Yazidi community was one of several minority groups that ISIS targeted, and if you don't know much about the Yazidi genocide, please stay with us. Our guest, Pari Ibrahim, is founder of the Free Yazidi Foundation, and she will tell us about the Yazidi community and threats that they still face. So Pari, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm very happy to educate the people who are watching today about what happened 5 years ago when ISIS started to attack the Yazidis and committing a genocide.
So Pari's work and the work of other partners like her organization is central to the Holocaust Museum's mission. In addition to being an educational institution, we seek to do for those targeted, for groups targeted today, what was not done for Jews in Europe in the 1930s and 40s, to be a voice for them, to sound the alarm for them. It is a core part of our mission to work to prevent genocide today, and we are very glad to work with you, Pari.
Thank you.
So let's begin with the basics, because I'm guessing for those who are watching on Facebook Live, and I do ask you to please submit your questions, that some of them may never even have heard of the Yazidi people. Can you tell us who this group is a little bit in brief?
The Yazidis are an ethnic religious minority. They live in the north of Iraq. We have, at this moment, 550,000 Yazidis who live in Iraq. Around the world, it's around 1 million. We are one of the oldest monotheistic religion in the region. For many, many years, our people have been persecuted because of our religion. Our religion has been misunderstood by neighboring communities, and this is why we have suffered genocide after genocide. We call this genocide that was perpetrated by ISIS the 74th genocide against our people because of who we are, because of our religion.
And one of the things that makes the Yazidi community particularly vulnerable is that location in northern Iraq, right? There are territorial disputes between Iraqi authorities and Kurdish authorities. And we are looking right now at the photograph of a bullet that I believe was removed from the leg of someone who was a victim during the events of 5 years ago. Could you describe what happened 5 years ago, please? Just set the scene.
So 5 years ago, on the 3rd of August in 2014, ISIS, also known as the Islamic State, they came basically to destroy the Yazidi community because they see the Yazidis as infidels, as non-believers, people that are not from the book. So we should be eradicated from the earth. And with this idea, they came in Sinjar in the north of Iraq. They started killing the men and older women. They kidnapped the women and children. The women were eventually sold as sex slaves in Iraq and in Syria to ISIS fighters. The children were brainwashed to become suicide bombers or child soldiers. Our community has a lot of trauma after these attacks. You know, we are now in the Holocaust Museum. We had said never again shall this happen. We will try to prevent genocide. It is very unfortunate that people today still suffer a genocide, and there needs to be more action, more things to do for people that suffer a genocide eventually. And what ISIS has done to my people, these horrible crimes should never be forgotten, and that's why today we remember the 3rd of August, 5 years ago. Today, people are still displaced from their homes. We talk about 360,000 Yazidis that are displaced in Iraq. They can't go back home. It is true that ISIS is militarily defeated, but the ideology of ISIS has never been defeated. It's still lingering around. It is spreading towards Europe and other countries. And this is a danger because if hate is spread, it spreads among other communities and eventually becomes a genocide.
And this is not just an abstract concept of hate. Correct me if I'm wrong, but some 3,000 Yazidi women and girls are still missing since 2014, is that right?
Yeah, the exact number of Yazidi women as of 20th of July 2019 is 2,930 Yazidis are still missing. So women and children are still missing.
So these are people's sisters, people's daughters, people's wives and grandchildren.
Yes.
And no one knows where they are.
Yes, and this is why we say the genocide is still ongoing, because our people are still or in captivity or they lie somewhere dead. We don't know, we don't have the answers, but we need to do something to get them back. We need to search for those. We are talking about 80 mass graves that have been discovered as of the 20th of July 2019. 80 mass graves full of Yazidi people.
So the full impact of this is still unfolding, is still being discovered.
I mean, yes. I mean, we're talking about this has been going on for many centuries. The genocide has been going on for many centuries, and our people have suffered immensely because of who they are. But if you look at daily life of Yazidi community, before and now, the situation is still not good. It is true, ISIS was a big problem and committed a genocide against the Yazidi community, but the area, Sinjar, has always been disputed between the Iraqi government and the Kurdish government. Constantly, the Yazidi community is always in the middle of the fighting for that piece of land. And so the people who are suffering even after the genocide are the Yazidi community. But daily unfair treatment, discrimination, it is very difficult for the Yazidi community to live in Iraq, to make sure that they can find a job, be fairly treated, get a good education. That's why among the Yazidi community, they never had any chances. And governments are not providing Yazidis with those chances to be a political voice for the Yazidi community, to have a voice around the table at all, or who is governing the areas where the Yazidis live. It is very difficult for the Yazidi community to think at this moment that they can just go back to Sinjar. Safety and security is priority number one.
So it seems like in a very obvious way, ISIS was exploiting an already vulnerable outsider status of the Yazidi.
Yeah.
And I do want to clarify for those who may not have followed completely, when Pari mentioned that the Yazidi were not people of the book, by that she means the definition of the three larger monotheistic faiths from the area, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, which had a defined status. Is that right?
Exactly. I mean, a lot of people in Iraq, they suffered horribly when ISIS entered Iraq and also in Syria. But we can definitely for sure say that the Yazidi community have suffered a genocide. And this, I was very, very relieved when the Holocaust Museum came out with a statement, with a report saying that this was clearly a genocide targeted to the Yazidi community to eradicate them from the earth. And that means a lot when people say, yes, it is true. So all our advocacy work, all the hard work to raise awareness to all people, like listen, 2,930 women are still in captivity. How can we not raise the voices for these women? A genocide is ongoing. People are murdered and massacred. Why is no one raising their voice? When the US Holocaust Museum came with that report, it was a relief because we knew that all our hard work was finally noticed. The Yazidi community had suffered a genocide.
And many of the photographs that you're seeing during this Facebook Live are from a 2015 Bearing Witness trip that staff from the museum's Simon Scott Center for the Prevention of Genocide took in order to be on the ground, not just to bear witness and tell the world what's happening, but also to say to Yazidi people, you are not alone.
Yeah.
People are listening, people are noticing, people are alerting.
Yes.
Pari, you yourself were touched personally by the genocide, you and your family. Could you share a little about that, please?
I mean, when I say Yazidi women are missing, I'm not only talking about my own family. I lost 19 girls of my family, but 2 of them escaped. 17 girls are till today missing.
From your family?
From my own family. 21 men of my family are missing, but we assume that they are in the mass graves because we heard the stories of the ones that came back, that the men were executed immediately. So, yes, on a day like this to remember our people of what happened 5 years ago, we're very sad that the world stood silent and did not act as quickly as it could.
And one of the reasons for the difference in treatment of men and women is that women were subjected and are continue to be subjected to sexual violence, correct?
I mean, during war, an easy target is women, and they can be used as weapons of war. They can damage a whole community. They have been treating the Yazidi women horribly, raping, torture. The stories that come back from our community, the women that come back and escape out of captivity are unimaginable. You do not wish to hear that, but the stories are out there. Our people are escaping out of captivity. And now we are trying to help those women and girls. We have a women's center. We try to give them education. We give them trauma treatment. It is so necessary that the healing process start. But one thing is very important. Healing processes, we have started that with trauma healing, with psychologists, but there are things missing. The family members are missing. Unanswered questions of where they are. Are they dead? Are they alive? Do we need to look for them? These questions, when they remain unanswered, people's hopes and expectations go up whenever they hear someone escaped out of captivity. But as soon as the person arrives and they see it's not their family member, their expectations and hope go down, and they start exactly at the same point as when we received them when they escaped out of captivity. So this is one thing. But another thing is also the Yazidi community has not had justice. Perpetrators are being indicted for only terrorism charges. Why did we call genocide a genocide? Why did we say crimes against humanity or rape or murder? These are all crimes that are so severe, especially the crimes of all crimes. Genocide should be possible to indict, but we see that it is very easy. A person that traveled to Syria, I can charge this person for terrorism. But then we don't look at what the survivors need, and the survivors need justice. If that perpetrator raped a Yazidi girl, he should be indicted, or she should be indicted for the crime that he or she committed. Joining ISIS is a crime itself, but ISIS was a genocidal group. They committed a genocide against the Yazidis, and we want to show the governments and international community that it is important that people get justice. When do we deserve a Nuremberg trial? Because the Jewish community suffered a genocide, they deserve justice. We today, after 5 years, are still screaming for justice.
And I think that's why we are speaking here today in the Holocaust Museum, is the body of law that would enable perpetrators of genocide and of other crimes against the Yazidi people to be prosecuted grew out of the Holocaust. It is a direct legacy of the Holocaust.
Exactly.
Now, you felt compelled not just to help individuals, but to found an organization, the Free Yazidi Foundation. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the tangible services that your organization provides to survivors and in the quest for justice?
Yeah, so our organization does a lot for women and children, the most vulnerable in our community, those who have suffered immensely. We give psychological treatment, trauma treatment, to make sure that these people, when they return into their communities, can start a new life again, can start the healing process. We do a lot on education, making sure that, like, if they never had a chance, because they're from rural areas in Iraq, then they will get a chance with the Free Yazidi Foundation to come to our centers and get a good education and start the process of providing for yourself and your family and your children. And this is our idea. We do not build buildings, because buildings can be lost and can be broken, but building the person from within is what we really think is most important. Because wherever the person goes, one day, if they resettle in Europe or America, or if they go back home in Sinjar in Iraq, then they have something, a skill, an education, a trauma treatment that they had to become the person who they are at this moment. And we have seen a lot of progress. There is so much good that you see, the smiles on the faces of these people that we're helping. It is so, how do you say that, gratifying. I'm really happy that we could do this work, and it's the greatest thing ever.
And we're seeing some pictures of this, of you in Sinjar. Yeah. And if you could say a little bit, also I'd like to remind people who are watching to please submit questions for Pari about the Yazidi, about these events. But additionally, you had mentioned something to me when we were talking before this show about training people within the community, training survivors to be counselors themselves. Could you talk for a moment about that?
So we, as a Free Yazidi Foundation, we bring in psychologists from different countries. They're experts, have had many years of experience dealing with women who have suffered sexual violence. And so what we did is we trained 26 Yazidis who were uneducated, and we tried to make sure that they got an education and healing for themselves. And now they're going into the communities, all 26 of them, try to do deal with nightmares, panic attacks, stabilization techniques, teaching the community how to take care of themselves. Because after the genocide, people are so traumatized and need so much help.
And what are the physical conditions like? You mentioned large numbers of people who are living in displaced persons camps.
Yes.
What are those like?
So 360,000 Yazidis are displaced. This means that this is a huge amount of Yazidis. They are living in tents. After 5 years, they still don't want to go back to Sinjar because of the lack of services, the lack of safety and security, infrastructure. And this is the main reason why they're not returning. But inside the camp, no one wants to not live in their house. How safe and comfortable does home feel? But when you're unable to go back, you have to live in a tent or an unfinished building where you live with, we serve a camp with over 16,000 Yazidis in the camps, and I don't know how many out of the camp. But the situation is very dire. I mean, we are talking about Yazidis that do not have chances to go get an education. The schools are too far away. They don't have money to go and get there. They live in tents. In the winter, it is freezing, so they turn heaters on and tents burst into flames. In the summers, they are so hot in the tents that the only thing they try to do is go somewhere where they have an air conditioning. It is very, very sad for my people to see that after 5 years, the governments haven't really made any action or given the Yazidi people, the Iraqi and the Kurdish government, the feeling that, like, yes, we are important to them. We are people from this country and we have the rights to live equally, fairly, and being treated very fairly. And it's very sad to see my people after 5 years still in camps and no sight for any future.
So, before we close, if you could highlight a couple of things that you think are the most urgent needs or the best way for someone who's watching this and feeling concerned, what does the Yazidi community need right now? There are so many needs.
I mean, there are so many needs. There are children walking barefoot because the parents can't afford a flip-flop. Or some children are walking with a flip-flop that is 5 years old, probably when they try to escape, and it's half broken. This breaks my heart. If we look back at the Jewish community after the Holocaust, then governments were taking in people because after a genocide, those people had lost everything. My people have lost everything. They don't have anything anymore. They live in displaced camps. They have nothing. We try to do the bare minimum, but the need of our people is so immense. Anything that people can support the Free Yazidi Foundation to keep going with our work, or tell the story of our people to other people, that how can a genocide occur in 2014, in the 21st century? It is unbelievable.
We hope that those of you who are watching have learned more about the Yazidi community through this program, but also please look in our comments section following up to see links about more content about the Yazidi and also links to the Free Yazidi Foundation. Pari, we are really honored to have had you as a guest this week. We wish we didn't have to mark this anniversary, but we are proud to do so with you, and we thank you for joining.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for watching.